Shit, ain't no nigga. Oh, sound like a racist. It's okay. We love together, brother. I see you. Hey, it's all good. You sitting there with some diverse crowd, so I'm hoping this is all love. But
it is love.
Well, it don't sound like it, man.
Everybody, you spread no love right now. You got the house hella quiet right now. Say something funny, man.
I will say something funny.
Shit right now.
I'm talking shit, yeah. I got something funny to say. Nigga, motherfucking jailhouse tattoos, nigga. You ain't no dog to do that shit. You weak ass nigga. You got your lip pierced, nigga? What kind of grown ass nigga is lip pierced, nigga? You a pussy, nigga. That's what the fuck you is, nigga. You got your lip pierced, nigga? I'm gonna pierce too. We can be outside too. We will. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. This nigga got his lip pierced, nigga. With grown ass nigga got his lip pierced, nigga. You eat ass or pussy, nigga. What are you doing? Nobody knows. No grown-ass man gets his neck pierced. Like, that's like getting your tongue pierced, nigga. What the heck? It's 2022. What are you talking about? This nigga got pork chop side price, nigga. Come on, what are you doing? Man, chill, relax. Chill. We moving on. I'm gonna continue my set, you know what I'm saying? I'm 6'8". You know what I'm saying? We out here. Yeah! We say he's gonna make every day. He said he's gonna make every day. You know what I'm saying? So, but it's all good. Anyway, like I was saying.
You at a comedy show.
Chillax. We out here. We good, you know what I'm saying? It's my first one to me. Like, we just laughing. We good out here. Anyway, like I was saying, don't mind the haters, you know what I'm saying? We living in a time where motherfuckers, he brought some motherfuckers down there at the goddamn Capitol Hill protest. You look like old Donald Trump dick sucking motherfucking. We wanted people there too. We did. You know, one thing about racist white people.
What is happening right now?
I got you. Anyway, like I was saying.
Yeah, no, my thing is just like, it's an open mic, sir. And this guy won last week, and so this is his time. Like, if you don't like what's happening, you can go smoke a cigarette, come back in after he's done. Like, it doesn't have to be an actual thing. You know?
Anyway, like I was gonna say, I fucked around for what I was gonna say. But like I was gonna say, in addition to this clown, was you know, white people when they
a few moments later.
I mean, like, who uses that? Nigga, that's questionable. Appreciate you talking. How that feel, The first routine? It felt good, you know what I'm saying? I got my first routine, my first routine, so it felt good. That was actually pretty good. I thought you dealt with it pretty nice, like, it got aggressive. They not gonna appreciate the program and sit there, and he gonna take his hands upside down and see them and who even chat? I don't know, but we finna see right now. I'll see your 300-pound all-muscle ass outside later. Guys, one more time. 6, 8! Not saying anything about your friends, I'm just saying, you didn't leave kind of early before the fight. See you outside! I'm gonna be right now. Right to this thing. Hey, you want to get out of here before this big black guy gets my ass? In all fairness, though, 6'8" needed that. Because he's a big dude and that's rarely going to happen to him, so it's good
could just see how he was able to handle it, and I'm glad it was turning into a fight. I'm not fucking tripping. It looked great on the fucking live stream. So. Go on. I was like, you know what? We need these views right now. Stop fucking around, everybody. Yeah, and Harrison, I get it, that's your friend. You know, I mean, like, I personally wasn't taking it any particular way. It just happens sometimes. But you guys do have to remember that. It is an open mic, so you'll see all levels of comedy here. So if you wanted an actual comedy show, you should have paid a fucking admission sometime. Yeah, so everybody just have a good time. Comics will be good, heckled. You can see I'm obviously going to stay the fuck out of it. So, your business.
This week at the Ocha Thai Comedy Dojo is our end of the month $150 prize for set of the night. So come out, bring your best, kill it. I want to see you make the room pop so we can give you this $150. Before we get started, please like, comment, and subscribe. Also, forgive me. I just came from the gym, so I'm wearing a wife beater right now, a titty top. I felt like it was more important that I get this out than worry about getting dolled up for you guys. You guys know what I look like. You guys know me. You see me at my best. You see me at my worst. So this day, I wouldn't say I'm at my worst, but I definitely am in chill mode. So let's get to it. What's up, guys? Ty Rivera here, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. We'll get to that in just a second. I'll address why that happened and why I let it go on the way it did, other than what I say in that particular clip. But I told everybody there would be an announcement when it comes to the Thai Comedy Dojo. The announcement, just to not keep anybody waiting, is AJ will no longer be the permanent co-host. I could go into specifics and why exactly, but I think what I'm about to say gives the best explanation of why it is that I will no longer have AJ as a permanent co-host. When it comes to running an open mic like the Thai Comedy Dojo and the hours we work, AJ gets there at 10 p.m. I usually get there around 10:30, but we're there till 2 or 2:30 a.m. AJ works a day job, which requires that he be there. I think he has to get up at 6 a.m. or something like that. So it can be kind of a thankless job. And then when you're working with a person like me that has a particular idea and a particular vision and a particular way that they want things to work out, it becomes an even more thankless job. So it's not fair for me to expect AJ to put in as much or more to the Thai Comedy Dojo. So we came to a point where I think, and I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I think AJ felt like maybe I was a little ungrateful, or I wasn't necessarily valuing his opinion as much as I should have. And maybe you could say that. I wouldn't completely deny that, because at the end of the day, I'm going to make the major decisions. And that's just the way that it's going to work out, because as I've discussed before when I was talking about the other situations that I've had at Ocha, at the end of the day, it all falls on me. I'm the one that answers to the owner of Ocha, and in a lot of cases, people think of that as my mic. So whether it succeeds or fails is on me. And it's not something I feel an incredible amount of pressure for, because if at some point I just decide not to do it anymore, then I just decide not to do it anymore. But I sometimes wonder why we as a scene here in Las Vegas, with all the talent we have, we don't have like a Kill Tony or a roast battle or our own thing that's branded where people know the Las Vegas comedy scene for that particular thing. And with everything that we've been doing, I think that we're starting to establish something like that here with the Thai Comedy Dojo. So there are going to be certain decisions that I don't look for anybody else's input on, and I respect the fact that if somebody's going to be involved with something, then they'll probably want to make some money at it. And for right now, Ocha Thai Comedy Dojo really doesn't make a lot of money. And that's not something that I'm really focused on right now, because I know that it's going to take a bit to build what it is I'm trying to build. And when I joke and say that I'm giving $25 of my rent money every week, no, it's not $25 of my rent money, but I do put in that $25, and then the owner himself puts in the other $25, and that's how we get to the $50. Then we had money that was given back to us by Robert Real Deal Martinez when he won. So we're still going through that money. So for right now, it's been up to $75 pretty much every week, except for the weeks that I was gone. We decided to take away the bonus $25 because me not being there takes away from the level of difficulty. So long story short, I'm going to be having different people co-host with me. This week, it's going to be Casper. And I know this is kind of sudden. Like I said on Facebook, I wasn't even expecting it. It just kind of happened. And I don't really have an interest in going into the specifics of it all because it just is what it is. And I wish AJ well. I'm not at all angry. I don't know what anybody else feels. I just know that I'm not at all angry. And I always feel like things happen for a reason. And if at some point AJ decides that he wants to come back or he wants to talk to me about possibly being host again, that's something I'm open to. But right now, I don't think that that's something he's really considering. And it's not something that I'm going to really concern myself with. Like, I have to move on. And everything that AJ's been doing, I should be learning myself anyway. And I should be able to do myself. Like, when it comes to being there at 10 p.m. so that people can sign up, or before 10 p.m., I should be there. When it comes to hooking up the wireless mics, which AJ does every week, I should be able to do that. When it comes to everything to do with the sound, everything to do with running OCHA, I should be able to do all of that on my own. And yeah, after I've learned to do that all on my own, then I will start bringing other people in and delegating some responsibility. But I've got to get OCHA making money before I start bringing other people in. So for right now, it should be, for the most part, a one-man operation. David Hewlett will still be a part of the show. I already spoke with him on the phone, and we're completely cool on what's going on. I, of course, hit him up, but David Hewlett also knows that he's not a part of the decision-making at OCHA just because, like I said, it is my thing. And when it was me and AJ, I was cool with running a lot of things by AJ. But like I said, at a point, I will make certain decisions, and that's just what it is. So David Hewlett gets his benefit from being able to learn what he's trying to learn and practice with piano/organ. And so, like, things just work out the way that they're supposed to work out, in my opinion, and I'm completely fine with everything, have nothing disparaging to say about anybody. But to get back to that particular clip, the reason I let it go on the way that I let it go on is because there were a couple of things happening in that situation. One, 6'8" is a very physically imposing figure. So he's not going to have a lot of people chime in that way when he's on the road or when he starts performing in some of the paid shows. So I thought it was a good exercise to let him run through that. Also, I didn't have the feeling at any point that that particular heckler was going to get physical. Some people would say you have no way of knowing that, but sometimes you kind of know. Sometimes you have a feeling. And so I let it go on for that reason. Also, we have security at OCHA, which I try not to tax Josh, our security, too much, but we do have security there, so it's not really going to be a problem. And because one of the things that we do as newer comics is sometimes we'll really labor a particular point or go after a particular subject. And that's something that 6'8" had done in his set. And that's something I've been noticing when we have some of the people do the 15-minute feature, which we might be changing the 15-minute feature and cutting people's time down on that, which I don't think anybody's really going to mind. Because when you're a newer comic, one of the things that you'll do is sometimes you'll just really drive a point home. And 6'8's set that night, which I'm not going to share his entire set because that's part of the agreement at OCHA, is that we'll stream it on YouTube, but then I make it private in case comics are working on particular material and don't want their material out there like that before it's completely worked out, before they've completely hashed out what they want to do with it. And so out of respect to that, I'm not going to show all of what 6'8 had done. But his set had been very ethnic heavy as far as Black people, Native Americans, the way that white people have screwed everybody, which is something that like you really can't deny in a lot of ways. When you think about the history of this country, that's something that's happened. I'm a person that's kind of like, it is what it is, and so I have fun with it. And I think 6'8 was having fun with it too. But the thing was, he had gone at it for a little bit too long. So at a point, this particular guy, who was a white man, and that is important to the story, got upset with this. And I could tell that that's what he was upset with. You can tell by the heckles that that's what he's tired of. And so some people would say that white cisgender, which this isn't the way that I usually talk, but I'm just going to put it in the most PC SJW terms just to paint the picture. Some people would say that white cisgender men have too fragile of egos and should be forced to listen to that kind of stuff. I guess, I mean, like, that's the way some people see it. And I wouldn't deny that that's the way that some people would see it. But I would say that when you're thinking as far as being a comic goes and you're trying to make an audience laugh, if an audience member gets that upset about it, maybe it's something to consider when you're doing longer sets, that break it up a little bit. Kind of shift what your focus is at different points and then come back to that. Like, we've all done that when we were first starting out, where we really just talk about something over and over and over. Like with me, it was gay. And I've talked about this before on Comedy Tip Tuesdays, where I would just be really aware of what the audience was doing. And if I saw the audience like kind of give a shift or kind of look like, okay, this is enough of gay material, then I would go into something about my family, or I'd go into something about being Latino, or there's a lot of subjects that I can talk about that aren't just being gay. And so I think it's something to be aware of as newer comics. A couple weeks back, we had a comic doing the feature set that was talking about their work. And that's all they were talking about, is their work. And it wasn't really hitting with the audience, which were mostly comics at that point, but it was just done in a way where it felt like, okay, I get it, your work, but I don't want to feel like I finished a day with work with you at the end of your set. I don't want to feel like, I get it, your job sucks, or you don't like things about your job. And so these are things to keep in mind if you're a newer comic, is it's okay to jump around a bit. Like a 15-minute set, I would say to try to break it up into at least 4 topics and try to make that somewhat even. Like, this won't be an exact science, and I don't expect you to make it an exact science, but I would tell you that this is something to think about. I think Chris Rock has talked about it before. I know Rick Gutierrez, who does a lot of writing for Gabriel Iglesias and, really helps Gabriel out with his writing, I should say. He doesn't do a lot of writing for Gabriel. He helps Gabriel fine-tune his writing. But Rick is somebody that's helped a lot of us out, and that's not a secret. Rick Gutierrez has given a lot of good advice to a lot of comics, including myself and Nick Guerra. Like, we've all talked to him about stand-up. Now, however much of his stuff we take is at our own discretion. But one thing that I really took from when Rick was telling me was he drew out a tic-tac-toe, and he was like, put everything in categories and think about things that way. So you have your family here, you have your ethnicity here, you have the fact that you're gay here, you have the fact that you're a man here, and so on and so forth. And so maybe that's a way to think about things when you're doing the longer sets, just so you don't wear an audience out. Because in this particular case, it happened to be about race, and that can get touchy for a lot of people. But in different instances, it's going to be different things. Like, a lot of people have talked about how a lot of female comics, which I know some people are going to try to come down on me about this. I don't care. Have your feelings. But a lot of people have talked about how a lot of female comics will really labor the point of dating. And so if you're talking too much about dating, then people get like, all right, we get it. Dating in LA sucks, which is one of the biggest cliches with male and female with LA comedy, is people are always like, so dating sucks in LA, so traffic, but that's me going off on a tangent. But if you're talking about any one of those particular subjects too much, maybe it's something for you to be aware of and think about the audience, because we can have that argument all day about cisgender, white, straight men and their fragility. If you want, you can have that conversation. But when I talk to you, I'm not coming to you from a stance of political correctness or what we should and shouldn't talk about in society. I think we should be able to talk about everything. But I'm talking to you about stand-up comedy, and if you're trying to have good sets, which at the end of the day is what we all want to have, is good sets. Like, as comics, I think that the laughs are more important than the point in a lot of cases, and then you can figure out how to put your points in as you learn how to get more laughs. And people will also take that in better from you once you figured that part out. It's kind of like the spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down type thinking. Like, you want to make sure that you include that sugar. And that's what wasn't happening in 6-8 set. And I'm not at all coming down on 6-8. I thought 6-8 did a great job, but 6-8 admittedly is a newer comic. Like, he wouldn't tell you any different. And that's one thing that I think a lot of people miss when it comes to Thai Comedy Dojo and the way that I do my thing is, every once in a while I will interrupt, and every once in a while some people may see that as heckling, and sometimes it is heckling. But at the same time, after the comics come off stage, I will talk to them about what it is I think they could do to make their sets better and why it is I interrupted them. And sometimes even during their sets, I'll tell them what it is that's throwing me off about what they're doing. I didn't do the best job of that on one particular time, but then you also have to remember that even though I've been doing this for a long time, as far as me doing stand-up, when it comes to running the Thai Comedy Dojo, this is a different format even for me. So every once in a while, I am going to make mistakes. Every once in a while, I'm going to think about what it is I'm doing later. Or every once in a while, I'm going to think about what it is I did during a particular person's set. And I'm going to be like, okay, maybe that wasn't the best way for me to handle that. Or maybe I should have waited a little bit and let them get their point out. That's something I apologized outright to Mark Ass Johnson about. Was at one point, Mark had been doing 3-minute sets because we just wanted him to really do actual material, because Mark is a great improv type guy, and he doesn't do improv specifically. Sorry, my eye's itching. But he doesn't do improv specifically, or I don't think he's trained in improv, but he's just a really good off the cuff guy. And so I wanted to see him actually do material. So since he wasn't actually doing material, I was like, all right, we're going to be dropping you down to 3-minute sets until you at least give me one set of actual material. That's what I want to see out of you, Mark Ass Johnson. And AJ accidentally set the clock for Mark on that night for 5 minutes instead of 3 minutes. And then right at the beginning of Mark's set, before Mark had a chance to say anything, I interrupted Mark and was like, all right, we gave you 5 minutes this time. Don't fuck it up. And then that kind of rattled Mark a little bit. And I don't say that in a bad way, but it did kind of rattle him a little bit, and it changed what he was doing, and it changed the dynamic of the moment. And I felt bad about that. So I told Mark, I'm sorry I jumped the gun on you. I should have just let you do what you were going to do. And I really did mess up in that particular instance. He was a good sport about it. Me and Mark have a good relationship, but I personally felt bad about that, and I felt like it was something that I should apologize to him person to person about and let him know. I also did that not too long ago, and it was with Trevor James. And I had interrupted at a point, which was a fun little heckle, but he was on a roll and doing well on his own. And I could have said that later or not said it at all. I'm there to enhance. I'm there to help out is the way I see it. I'm not there to take over. So in that particular instance, because Trevor hadn't in any way petered out at that point, it wasn't like he was doing this crowd work and having this fun and then all of a sudden it slowed down. It was still while he was in his momentum, and I jumped in, and it was just because I did have something funny to say, but that's not the purpose of why I'm there. So I will fully admit that I'm learning to do this as the comics are doing this as well. And that's the reason also that I want to be able to offer more money to the comics. And one of the reasons that I don't necessarily want to have a continuous co-host, because if you have a continuous co-host, then you do have to treat them somewhat as a partner, and you do have to cut them in at least equal to what you're getting paid. And if I can give more money to the comics, because the comics that are participating in the show, in the mic, to me are at least 50%, if not more, of the magic. So yeah, I appreciate what I do, and I appreciate my time. And after I build this to where I want to build it to, then we'll all be able to do well enough off of it that everybody's going to be happy. But for right now, if I have to take a little bit of a hit and not make as much money as I would like to make off of a particular thing and dedicate a lot of hours and not get a lot of monetary thank you back, then that's my loss to take on, and I shouldn't ask somebody else to shoulder that with me. So understand that I am fully admitting that Ocha Thai is a work in progress. Understand that I'm not at all blaming AJ for not being a part of the show anymore. It's just sometimes you have to try things in different ways to see what's actually going to work and see what's best for something. And as far as I go, the door is open to AJ if he at some point wants to come back in some capacity. AJ is definitely welcome to do sets at the Thai Comedy Dojo. I still love AJ. I still consider AJ a friend. And that's where I'm at with everything. So I hope this helps clear it up. And if you guys have any questions for me, leave it down below in the comments. I appreciate everybody watching. Thanks so much. This has been Ty Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world.